Building Bridges, Decolonizing Engineering at the University of Manitoba. Here at the University of Manitoba, in the Price Faculty of Engineering building, just outside the Dean's office, is a nondescript empty hallway. It's an interesting location for a new work of art, symbolic of an exciting new initiative.
I think it's a unique opportunity. It's going to connect with people and it's going to resonate with people. It's all about creating a dialogue, and it always is with me. Everything that I do, I try to have a conversation.
Mike Valcourt is an Indigenous artist whose artwork you can find on walls all throughout the city of Winnipeg and beyond.
Through the decolonization process, this mural is attempting to connect people with sort of the history of Manitoba. I don't think that people should be afraid of decolonization, and I know that when people bring that up, a lot of people tend to shy away from it, but really it means that you're reclaiming that which is lost. Everybody can be a part of it. It's just a matter of recognizing what it is and how it affects Indigenous peoples, and thinking outside the box, like what can you do to help with the process.
The faculty is engaging in that process by designing a course centered on the challenge of decolonizing engineering.
Engineers had a more than significant role to play in colonization. The governments at the time actually used engineers as the foot soldiers of colonization.
Randy Herman, director of NGAP, the Engineering Access Program, is leading one of these transformative classes for first-year engineering students.
And at first it happened with surveyors. Now you maybe not know the history of engineering, but early on in the history of engineering in Canada, surveyors were considered engineers. They would call themselves engineers. Who was the first person to come out to land? It was the surveyors. And why did they come out? They came out to measure the land. Because unless you know what land you have, you can't take it away from somebody and give it to somebody else. So the first interaction most Indigenous people had was with surveyors. That's how Manitoba was born. Because Louis Riel actually put his foot on surveyors' tape that were sent by the government of Canada and said, "You're not doing that here." Because he understood what that meant, and he sent them home. So after you have surveying, what do you have? Well, you start building roads, and you start building railways. Roads to us are how we get around. But you know what roads brought to Indigenous people across the prairies? They brought tuberculosis, right? They brought other diseases, that measles, that they weren't prepared for. And it killed thousands of people across the prairies. Almost all of our hydroelectricity comes from the north. 80% of the north is Indigenous communities or Indigenous people. So who's mostly impacted by the effects of hydroelectric dams? Well, it's people in the north. It's Indigenous people. Who gets all the benefits of those things? Well, I do, when I turn on my light or I run my blender or whatever I want to do. We do not live in a meritocracy, because I know people who should be here who aren't here because of where they were raised, because of the color of their skin, who are smart enough to be here but are not. These are slides from this university showing our graduating class. And what do you see there? More likely, what don't you see here? So what is this idea of colonization? What does that mean? Colonization is a troublesome hierarchy. This troublesome hierarchy puts European or Western thought at the top, and everything else is below it. And we need to deconstruct that. And decolonization is the idea we have to remove this hierarchy. Maybe we got to start inviting Indigenous knowledge back into the classroom and Indigenous perspectives. Maybe there's room for them. A decolonized curriculum would bring questions of class, caste, race, gender, ability, and sexuality. There's this idea that Indigenous people did not have technology or science. That's absolutely wrong. The latest archaeological evidence tells us that Indigenous people have been on this continent for 20,000 years, 22,000 years. They've put up with weather like we have outside. They fed themselves. They thrived in all kinds of environments. You don't do that without science and technology. We can talk about the physics of teepees and all the other built structures. They used clay. They had a mathematical system, many of them. They were building cities. They invented a suspension bridge. The Incan people invented a suspension bridge 400 years before any European built a suspension bridge. They used metalwork. We have this idea of Western science, and we have those verbs associated with Western science. But Indigenous science isn't that. Indigenous science is this. And it's almost completely opposite. But I want to impart in your heads that it's not wrong, and it's not less than. It's just different. And some of the problems we have today are problems simply because we've simplified too much. That we need to start thinking about complexity. Because that's what we need to solve some of the wicked problems we're facing today. You know, we, as engineering, we are heavily boxed in by Western science. That's our box. And Indigenous knowledge, it's all outside of the box. We discredit all of that knowledge. And as engineers, I know we're good at one thing, at least, and that's designing boxes. Can we design a bigger box? A box that holds Indigenous knowledge? This is the Master Association Engineers Canada. This is our code of ethics. Hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public and the protection of the environment, and promote health and safety within the workplace. Are we upholding this? Have we in the past upholded this? And the reason I'm here is because in the future, I'm hoping that we can uphold this. What not to do? Don't remain inflexible and unchanging, you know. I know when somebody says to me, oh, we don't do it, we're not going to do that because traditionally we've always done that, right? Tradition tells us lots of things that we don't do anymore because we realize they were bad things to do, right? So that happens. And for God's sakes, don't do nothing. You got to do something.
Far from doing nothing, Mike is burning the midnight oil, trying to get his mural completed on time.
I put the Human Rights Museum in there and sort of over-designed it to make it look like a beaver dam. And that goes in direct juxtaposition of the hydroelectric dam that I placed in the mural. I've placed it in the mural and had buffalo jumping over it, much like the old buffalo jump.
Meanwhile, the new course on decolonizing engineering takes another step towards truth and reconciliation.
It just reminds me like we've thrown a stone into a pond, and it feels like we're getting these circles that are just growing and growing and growing.
Dr. Jillian Sinuk-Chichuk, co-creator of the project, believes that it's important for non-Indigenous allies to listen to and support Indigenous voices and ideas. This new course features nearly 20 elders, knowledge keepers, educators, and academics. Elder May Louise Campbell has spent decades sharing her knowledge of Indigenous cultural values and spiritual healing. Her presentation focused on the sacredness of water.
So what does it mean, the spirit of water? What it means that we as humans must begin to recognize, to realize, and to focus on the truth. So what is the truth? The truth is definitely water is the life force of the earth. Just stop and think how profound that is. That's what you're going to be working with. The life force of every living thing on this earth. That's how powerful it is. And that's how healing it is. That it has the power to do many things. What happens with water? You know, we get power from water. It gives us light. It gives us so many things. It gives us wellness and health. But more than that, in our culture, in our traditional ways, we see everything as so sacred that it's our responsibility as humans to take care of the water, to take care of the water. So how do we do that? It's by offering it gratitude. When you have your shower in the morning, when you drink a glass of water, I do that all the time. I made it a habit for many years now. I said, thank you for this water, Creator. This water is the life force of all living things. I am so grateful for this water that cleanses my body, my spirit, and nurtures me. I am so grateful. I send you love and gratitude. Just a few words, and you'd be amazed how powerful those words can be.
Miigwech, Elder May Louise.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Former president of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan, John Desjarlais, spoke on his Cree culture and its relationship to engineering ethics.
I'm Indigenous from northern Saskatchewan. I grew up in a very small town in northeastern Saskatchewan, Cumberland House, or Kaministukwimanagiskak, the island of the big trees. But there was always this understanding, we're always seeking to live a good life. And, we were taught a lot of things through media, through TV and things like that. Good life was, accumulation of material things. It was the accumulation of private wealth, bank accounts, investments, material possessions. But yet at the home and then in the community, good life meant different things. And so, kinship, good relationships, and reciprocity was very important. And so there was a very different kind of value system in how we thought things and how we did things. It's a Cree concept of natural law. And so, we talk about natural law, everyone talks about natural law. It's a body of unchanging moral principles regarded as a basis for all human conduct. And so, Minumpimachisun, which is the ability to make a good living for oneself. And it's that ability to do so. Good living is not, traditionally, it's not financial at all. It's about well-being, community well-being. Minumpimatsuan is just basically the good life.
Industrial professor and assistant dean, community and culture at the University of Victoria, Jessica Vandenberg, explored the importance of understanding diverse perspectives to foster meaningful connections.
So Indigenous worldview really works in a circle. No one is above anybody else. We walk in concert with everything else. That we treat everything as our relations, and we are equal, and we walk with respect with everything, and taking only what we need, reciprocating, honoring along the way, which is very different than the Eurocentric worldview, which is built more on a hierarchy where man is above everything else, where you can own animals and you can own the land and you can choose to do what you want with the land. So Wahkotowan, we have interconnectedness within us. All our cells and blood and bones and everything is combined together in mass. We are bound together by energy and spirit. We are amazing pieces of creation, and that's a blessing. But with Wahkotowan, we are also part of the natural environment. We're part of the ecosystems. All of our relations are part of the larger family that we're part of. And then we also have the tie to the spirit world, where our 7 generations of ancestors walk with us, and we tie to Creator.
Muskokowin James Harper is an NGAP alumni and board member at the Indigenous Clean Energy and Pembina Institute, centered on interconnectedness and reciprocity in engineering.
A bead, a single bead, is considered animate in the language. In this way, everything ever created has and is energy in motion. Beads are considered beings, that they influence the beader, the artist, through the stories they tell, the teachings they carry, and the potential that they have. So, in this way, a Nihiawiwin Cree speaker is always subconsciously thinking about how everything in the surroundings is exchanging energy, what kind of relationships are happening, and ultimately understanding that everything is interconnected. We cannot commit undue harm on our fellow kin, as we cannot do so on each other. This inherently makes it impossible to overpower and dominate over everything in the natural world. Rather, we must maintain good relations and steward all creation. When we take something for the benefit of ourselves from the environment around us, we must return something in exchange, often at greater value than the thing that we are taking. We honor everything that is given to us by giving back. In engineering design, a good question that can remain rhetorical for now is that when we consider taking water from our earth, manipulating its energy to power our homes, what are we giving back? How are we gifting something to the life of the waters that improves their well-being? What are we gifting to the displaced peoples and habitats to honor this change? And is it a fair balance?
Thank you to James. I challenge you all now to put something you learned in the chat. What has resonated for you? What have you heard? What have you learned? What are you thinking about? What are you going to take with you into your future engineering practice?
This process of learning about decolonization and indigenization had a profound effect on the students who took the course.
Hello, my name is Harvey Wastesigut. I am a First Nations band member of Garden Hill First Nation.
My name is Samantha Wilson and I identify as a white settler woman. I am also a master's student in water resources engineering.
My name is Clayton Cook. I'm from the Bloodvein River First Nation. That's Treaty 5 territory.
I'm Claire Sagan. I'm in my 5th year of civil engineering. I am a white settler on Indigenous territory, and this is my final reflection.
When I was a kid, I didn't know about engineering. Like I used to deconstruct radios. Yeah, if somebody told me that that's a job, when you get older, that could be a job, something I loved playing with, right, as a kid. You know, I might have, been excited about it. Kids can make that connection from their childhood hobbies. If they love doing this, they can continue that through this education system, really learn more. And I encourage the parents too to, if they see their kid doing stupid things, they might not be stupid things. It might just be the kid just learning a new and awesome thing. It's not encouraged, it's not nurtured.
I often wonder some of the younger people, if they came out to to this class, Decolonizing Engineering, how much of an impact it would have on them. But they don't know these things. Hearing about how bad things were back then, and then hearing about how rough things are today, it just creates a heavy burden, and it's unnecessary. It shouldn't be this way, but that's the way it is. That's something that has to be taught. The people that can take it, they should be able to go through with this so that they know. There's a way of thinking that we have as Indigenous people, just because we're around nature, just because we're, some of us see the lake every day, that needs to be added to the general engineering population. We can't lose that. We can't lose it. We need to hold on to that, and we also need people that are from these communities to become engineers. And who knows, the next person who is watching this or even hears this could be the one that changes the course of our country's history.
One thing this course really taught me was how much I did not already know about Indigenous people. I had learned about it in school, and I do know just from talking to older generations that what I learned was less whitewashed than before. However, this course really helped me to understand how much was still missing. I had never learned about that in school, despite it being right in the same continent that I lived in. And I think the fact that I probably never would have learned any of that unless I took this optional university course really says something about the failure of our educational system to properly tell us about these different people who are living within around us today.
So before starting the course, I was unfamiliar with the words decolonization and indigenization. I did not recognize the distinct and unique cultures within each First Nation. I was passive. Again, I thought just being an ally, just not saying bad things was good enough. And I was unaware of my own unconscious bias. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I am a white settler. I have so much unlearning that I still need to do.
For the young people that are watching this and aspiring to either going to engineering or into some other field, you're going to want to help your people at some point in your life. You're going to want to do something for them regardless of what's happened to you in your past. You're going to want to help them. It's in you. Sooner or later, you're going to come across those opportunities. And it would be best to be as prepared as possible to help as much as possible when those opportunities arise.
These are some of the things that I took away from the class that I could incorporate into practice. The first one is to advocate for change and inclusion, to challenge colonial and patriarchal conscious and unconscious biases. I've never been one who's afraid to speak up or stand up for something that I believe in, and this is something that I want to take with me to work.
I think engineering does give the opportunity to make a difference because you can make a design that will impact a large amount of people. I would encourage anyone can go into engineering. There are so many different aspects of it that you can figure out how to apply engineering to what you enjoy, because what engineers do impacts a large range of people. And I think in order for it to actually work for everyone, you have to have different perspectives into it.
The whole course was a real profoundly enlightening journey. Nowhere in those books and those teachers telling me that they ever said that Indigenous cultures and engineering was sophisticated enough to be noticed. I guess I'm learning what it means to be Indigenous for probably the first time in my life. I can live without colonialism in my life. I can be who I was, who I am.
Elder in residence, Norman Mead, believes this holistic approach to science is essential to truth and reconciliation.
How can we bring that together, the spiritual aspect of our life and the science aspect of our life? I mean, we kind of put them in separate categories, and we say, well, they really don't come together, but they do. The greatest engineer is the creator. And when the creator provided us with this garden, if you will, that we are part of, right? The creator asked us to know and understand what those laws are about, and that you don't change or tamper with them. We have tampered with them, and we see what the consequences are. The science is the part of the knowledge that we have to learn to live with, right? We just can't keep taking. So science helps us with that. How much can I take from Mother Earth? We're not in this world alone. We're here with many, many other people. Love is the main ingredient. I have to love those that I see struggling. Love is going to be bottom line. Yeah.
The day has finally arrived, an important one for the entire engineering faculty, as Mike's mural is unveiled and Dean Marcia Friesen presents an update on the Decolonizing initiatives.
So we envisioned a project on the theme of truth and reconciliation and engineering.
I think about how many hundreds, perhaps thousands of students, many of them engineering students, will walk by here and will take a minute and pause and look at this and think about it. And think about, well, we got a dam there, but we got buffalo jumping off of that dam. What does that mean? We got a raven here with an engineering ring on top of a birch bark canoe. What does that mean, right? And then the Museum of Human Rights and a bunch of beavers there. What does that mean? They will leave with something, I think, something profound.
As with everything that I try to do, I try to challenge people and engage people. The acknowledgement of, the past through the truth and reconciliation, and then a promise for the future. That's something that resonated with the whole faculty. And so they've kind of instilled that idea in me, and it translated well in my design and on the wall.
It's clear that engineering has been one of the ways that colonization has been operationalized. It's one of the ways that the vision of settlers as to what it would mean to develop this land was enacted. So whether it's through a course or a project or a guest speaker or a visual presence, We need to hear things in different ways, at different times, by different people, through different modes, to really bring it into ourselves as well. And that's why this project behind me is important, but all of the other initiatives in our faculty are also important.